Some things seem too obvious. So when Blacklock's reported that Elections Canada was considering storing some information in the cloud, which of course implies foreign servers, the first question was not so much why, as why on earth would they do that? You ask why when in all humility you accept that sometimes there could be a good reason for doing what seems like the wrong thing. Like when the Liberal government on the one hand wants to reduce Canada's carbon emissions, but on the other hand doubles the number of carbon-emitting immigrants to this country. It seems inconsistent. But of course, the sale of new homes might be all that's keeping Canada's construction industry going. Certainly wouldn't be pipelines, would it? My friend and colleague Linda Slobodian asks this in an insightful column we published on March the 20th, and she concludes that even if there is a good reason, it's still the wrong thing to do. Common sense tells you there is no way that anything pertaining to Canadian elections could or should or might be stored on a foreign service. It doesn't matter how much money it would save or how secure are the servers or reliable the people that own them. You don't even waste time talking about it. Election data is a core Canadian interest. You build the system you want here and you make sure it's done right. But if you watch the headlines, doing the inconsistent, the inexplicable, the downright stupid is what this Liberal government is all about. Take fertilizer. Just for the sake of the argument, let's say that when Prime Minister Trudeau says climate change is so important that reducing Canada's carbon emissions is the moral equivalent of war, that we believe him. We don't, of course. But just saying, what if we did? And then, in good faith, we also accepted the logical extension of that to further reduce Canada's small contribution to world carbon dioxide, prairie farmers must cut their fertilizer use. This, of course, would mean lower yields. And if you accept the Prime Minister's premises, perhaps that's an acceptable price to pay. But even if it was, maybe not this year? When there's no guarantee the world's other great breadbasket in Ukraine, which feeds Africa, will produce more than a few buns? Do it maybe when things get back to normal? After all, if climate change is going to kill us all, it'll do it in the next 200 years. Without wheat, Africans are starving now. For the same reason, the war in Ukraine, it would have been common sense to sell natural gas to our German NATO allies. But there's no business case, Mr. Trudeau said. There was a moral case, and there is a common sense case, but they didn't do it, did they? And if you really believe carbon dioxide is the end of the world, why not help Asian countries that depend on coal to switch to Alberta natural gas? And, by the way, in doing so, reconcile a whole lot of Indigenous aspirations in the process. Common sense, right? But apparently not in Ottawa, where the Liberals have spent the last 7.5 years making it harder and harder to develop clean energy in Western Canada while continuing to import the dirty kind back east from some of the worst countries in the world. Like closer to home, it would also have been common sense to start building new baseload electrical generation we know will actually work before closing the coal-fired generations so that we can do what? Depend on things we know will only work when the wind blows and the sun shines? This is like dropping your street map in the bin before you know your new route guidance system is unfailingly accurate. Differences in the consequences. With untested route guidance, you may end up in a blind alley, but with a governmental mismatch between power generation and the demands of a growing population swollen by immigration means brownouts and blackouts. Look, if it can happen in Texas, it can happen in Alberta. It can happen all over Canada. And to that point, it was gratifying to hear Premier Smith acknowledge this at her presser on March the 21st. Meanwhile, we're stuck with a Liberal government that responds to inflation with tax increases, to a pandemic with economy-destroying lockdowns, and to a scandal surrounding electoral interference by appointing a family friend to make discreet inquiries. To some degree, it is their faith in their own climate change narrative that blinds them. But there is also a mentality born out of socialization. These people do not live in the same world as the rest of us, do not face the same personal challenges. They don't even know what milk costs. And they care about things that only people with time on their hands can afford to pay attention to. That's what has to be the matter with the Liberals. Otherwise, when one looks at decisions that could store Canada's electoral data offshore and all the rest of it, you're left asking, are these people even working for us? For the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.
Canadian Shooting Sports Association. Without the CSSA, our gun rights would have been taken long ago. These guys are on the front lines helping to draft smart and intelligent firearms regulations and legislation in Canada, and more importantly, educating the public about how we keep guns out of the hands of the wrong people. To become a member, it's absolutely worth every penny. You can become a Western Standard member for just $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access.